that previously we've been discussing regarding the concept of marriages. And we know that today marriage is one of the greatest institutions for the human race. It's not just about this unification between a husband and a wife, and also it's about this meaning of preserving the tradition, understanding the value of family. However, for some nations today, that when we talk about marriage, especially for women or even for the younger generations, it's not just about this celebration. As a matter of fact, some of the girls today who are not even mature enough, and they are forced to be married. And also, it's rather difficult to balance between jobs, university life, and also being the parent to the children. How should we understand that? Now, when it comes to the nation of Uzbekistan, what is happening to those women today? And why is it critical we need to understand this social inequality? And also, what role does social media play when it comes to those what we call illegal marriages? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to invite our distinguished speaker, who is Niginakhon Saida. Saida is a scholar whose research interests focus on gender, Islam, and politics in Central Asia. Nikina, and welcome to The Missing Piece.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Nikina, initially when I discovered you, because this amazing article that you wrote, which is entitled Brides Too Soon, the rising trend of early marriages in Uzbekistan. Now, help us with better understanding. Again, in the article, you mentioned this is something quite stunning. Of course, it's rather shocking to all of us that those girls who are expected to be married or who were married, as a matter of fact, they were not really reaching the mature age. But no one actually cared about that. And also it has become a trend. The young girls today, they were married, but meanwhile, it was rather difficult for them to balance between the household chores and taking care of children and also studying. Help us understand what's happening today and why is it important for us to have this conversation?
Thank you very much for your question. I probably should start. Maybe I'll explain it a little bit later because there is a difference between arranged marriage and forced marriage. So the marriages in Uzbekistan are not necessarily forced; they are arranged. So I will explain it a little bit late after introducing like what is happening. As I mentioned in the article, early marriages, especially among young girls in Uzbekistan, are re-emerging, right? By law. By the way, both boys and girls in Uzbekistan can marry at the age of 18 only. For girls, this cap can be decreased by 1 year when there is a valid reason such as pregnancy, emancipation of a minor, or the birth of a child, etc. But it's a very difficult procedure because it requires a permission from a city mayor. Right. So, and in fact, there are very few cases nationwide where officially registered marriages with brides under 18 take place. For example, last year, only 68 such marriages were registered. Right. And we're talking about Uzbekistan, where there are annually 300,000 marriages are registered. So 68 is not that big, but that's also only officially registered cases. So there could be some marriages with the nikah ceremony, like unofficially, without any registration. So because there is because of the law where girls cannot get married before 18, parents usually wait until their children, especially girls, graduate from school at 18 usually, and they reach the legal age, and then they get married off. The worrying part is how the proportion of girls who are marrying at the age of 18 and 19 has been steadily increasing over the past decade. Right? For example, if you look at the statistics from 2015, there were of all those almost 300,000 marriages, only 21% of them were with the brides 18 to 19. Last year, it reached to 36%. This is a huge jump in just a decade. For men, at the same time, the average marriage, I believe, remains somewhere 25, 27. But for girls, like, it is 22, 23, somewhere like this, the median age. So the negative impacts of it on girls is that because, again, girls are expected after becoming a bride to juggle everything at the same time, right? To serve in-laws, to serve husband, to do all the house chores, to appease the guests, neighbors, and giving birth to children, etc. Right? And at the age of 18 and 19, it's rather difficult. And it's hard for one person to handle all of this, especially when you do not have that much experience. Because usually girls in Uzbekistan are very much protected by their helicopter parents. They are not allowed to do much outside their household. So you can expect, right? So they do not often continue their studies after marriage. Right. There are many reasons, of course, but the latest survey showed that 40% of girls said that they did not continue their marriage because of the objection from either their in-laws or from their husbands. And they also do not often enter the work labor market immediately. Right? Because girls are expected to give birth and to serve everyone. Brides, not girls, I'm sorry. Brides are expected to serve in-laws, to take care of household chores, etc. And they are also expected to give birth immediately. And the fertility rate in Uzbekistan stands at 3.3, meaning that for each woman there is around 3-4 children. So women spend a decade giving birth to children, and after that can seriously start their career, building their career, and become financially more or less independent. So this decade of vulnerability puts them in a position where they are very much dependent on their husbands, on their in-laws, and in many cases they might become a victim of domestic violence.
Nigina, it's really difficult, again, as a male, to listen to you to describe what the girls are and also what the brides are facing today. Now, let's talk about the concept of arranged marriages. I want to go back to the article. This is something that you wrote, and I quote, "Arranged marriages remain popular in Uzbekistan and forced marriages until occur." Again, as you mentioned before, a study in 2021 surveyed that 250 teenage girls who married or gave birth early. Among the respondents, 70% indicate their parents were responsible for their marriages. We are living in the year of 2024. And again, I believe that for some part of the culture, arranged marriages still exist. But when I read this huge data or huge number, can you explain a little bit more? What is the reason for the parents to arrange the marriages for the girls and even for the families? I mean, how does that even fit into this culture in Uzbekistan today? What do you say to that?
Thank you for the question. That's an interesting question. I will start by saying that arranged marriages are not forced marriages, right? In arranged marriages, parents of a young boy, usually mothers, together with aunties, the other elderly women of their family, seek for a suitable bride for their eligible son, right? 20-something-year-old son. They seek for a bride from their familiar circles with the help of their friends, extended family, etc. Families usually try to find a bride from the same or similar socio-economic background because it's not just a union of a boy and a girl, but a union of families, right? Religion here hardly ever plays a role because, you see, officially they say 93% of the population in Uzbekistan are Muslims, but I would question it. Maybe 80-something% of them identify as Muslim, but there is a difference between practicing Muslims and cultural Muslims. Right. So, for example, people from practicing Muslim families, they look for a girl from a similar background, from a practicing family where a bride is also covered with hijab and everything. Right. ethnicity used to play a little bit bigger role, right? Uzbeks marrying only to Uzbeks and Kazakhs looking for Kazakhs, etc. But those lines are also becoming less and less relevant as long as young people are happy. So that arranged marriage does not necessarily mean that the young people do not have any say in the arrangement, right? So the parents find a suitable match, and the boy and the girl will go on a couple of dates. They learn each other. They ask each other like the most important, relevant questions, and etc. And if they end up liking each other, the socialic or the matchmaking process is finally concluded. For some girls or for some boys, it might mean a couple of dozen dates even, right? For example, I had a friend who were counting her dates, like arranged dates of 50, which is extraordinary, of course, which usually it's like maybe 10 dates, maybe 15 dates, and they find each other usually. But there is also a place of what you said, forced marriages, right? It's not just, it's not literally taking a girl by their hand and forcing them into the marriage registration office. It's rather through different means of manipulation, right? I am your mother. How can you say no to me? And also, let me just give a small maybe background. Why do parents do it? Right? Not young people look for each other. Why? It's parents' job. So I think it's partially because of religion, where Islam obliges parents and other members of the society to marry the unmarried, right? Especially if they are young unmarried people, the society are encouraged to marry them. Islam also encourages early marriages and the concept of big family with many children. So you have also to keep in mind that parents are the breadwinners of the family. There is this economic factor, right? Parents usually pay for their children's studies, the university fees, the cars, the weddings most of the time are covered by parents. And children live with their parents. Girls leave their parents usually until they marry and move in with their husbands. Older sons stay with their parents until they can afford a house, of course, most of the time with the help of their parents, and then they move out with their wives and children. The youngest sons always stay with their parents at home, at their parents' home. So you see, major financial decisions are made by parents. They are main breadwinners. So it's logical for them to seek out a suitable bride, because bride is not just a wife to a son. She is also a part of this extended family, right? The future mother of their grandchildren, etc. So they have, so they seek out for a girl that matches all their expectations. Another part of our culture is also we are taught from the very early age to respect our parents and their choices. But that doesn't mean young people are not finding each other. Dating sites, whether it's through Telegram Messenger or dating apps or others, they are also common. People also meet each other at the universities or workplaces, etc. And in those cases, if they date for some time, a boy can go to their parents and say that, hey, organize this matchmaking process socially. I want to marry that girl. If both parents are agree, the marriage takes place. So it's not necessarily all the time forced marriage, and it's not always the case where young people do not have any decision in it. It's just parents have more responsibility to carry out the process.
Nigina, I want to ask another question. I mean, again, when we look at some of the countries today, they are facing population decline. I mean, again, pay attention to the nations, for example, China, Japan, South Korea, and also even the US. People are very concerned and also anxious about this issue. So in other words, younger generations today are less likely to be married, let alone having children. Again, given this social, economic reason, or we're looking at this geopolitical complication, etc. But going back to Uzbek society, in this culture, what is the definition of marriage? I mean, again, you mentioned that the girls are not forced to get married. I mean, again, they are arranged, and of course, the parents, they have the final say about this. But ultimately, I want to go back to the question is, what is the definition of marriage, or even what is the value of marriage today in Uzbek culture, and how do women play this role in the culture today when we look at this marriage, when we look at this relationship, or when we look at this the trend? What do you say to that?
So marriage is the most important social institution in Uzbekistan, and especially elderly people pay a lot attention to it. Unlike in the West, for example, young people do not live with each other, move in with each other without marriage, without nikah at least. Right? So it's valued in a lot, particularly as you mentioned, because of the children, right? Because of the culture, because of the religion that we have. There is an expectation that children should be born within the marriage. So it's something sacred, and women play an important role. In theory, women are highly valued and respected, especially as mothers, and and elderly women receive a lot of respect. But in real life, not all women are shown equal respect, especially kilins, right? The brides and wives. Many girls, not all, but many girls grow up with no agency in Uzbekistan, right? Most important decisions are made for them, such as will they study at university, will they wear revealing clothes or hijab, will they work or become a stay-at-home mother. All those decisions are mostly made by their parents or by their husbands, etc. I'm not saying it's the case for all cases, but that used to be a common thread. Now it's changing with this girl boss era and everything. So in many cases, but again, I observe women are seen as the extension of man's belonging. Right? This can be seen, for example, in cases of gender-based violence, where 85% of gender-based violence in Uzbekistan happens within the households, and in around 85% of those domestic cases is where husbands are perpetrators. Right. So the reasons are different, of course, why they resort to violence, and the violence has different abuse, or violence has different forms, such as financial abuse, where they do not let their women work, or they do not give them enough money. They just confine them within the household, and they are totally dependent on their husbands, especially if the women are young. Right. Or they resort to physical or psychological violence as well. So women are expected to be obliging. And when women do not do as men wish in their family, like such as fathers or husbands, they punish women through different means. This lack of agency makes them very dependent on male figures of their family. They are very lucky if men in their family, such as fathers, husbands, brothers, are kind and supportive. If not, it's going to be a very torturous ride for them. Right? So I guess that is also partially because, you see, from the very childhood, men and women, like boys and girls, are treated differently, and there is this economic part play a role. Girls get married off, and they become the member of other family. They do not bring anything to their families. The sons, on the other hand, take care of their parents in their old age. They stay with their parents. So parents usually prefer to invest in their sons for their studies, for their work and the success and everything, rather than in their girls. Again, that's not the same case with everybody. Right? There are many government programs to support girls with scholarships to have higher education, master's degree, to study abroad, and etc. But that also requires permission from their parents, you see. So going back to the case, so that's why they discussing the reasons of early marriages, right? That's the one case. They traditionally, parents see girls as a little bit burden, right? First of all, they do not bring anything to the table in the future. They do not take care of their parents. In theory, I'm not saying in practice, right? Second of all, girls also carry the honor of the family because women are considered as an extension of men's belonging. Women are also the ones who carry the honor of the family. They are not allowed, for example. Now the social patterns are changing, but in rural areas it's still common. Like you are not supposed to date, for example. You're not supposed to move in with somebody. And those are the reasons like parents rush to marry off their daughters earlier. And there are other reasons as well. I discussed, if you read the article, I discussed this demographic gap between young men and young women. For every 1,000 men in their 20s, there is 954 girls in their 20s in the same age category, right? And men over 30 also want to marry younger girls. That's the expectation, right? When you're a successful man, you can have young, naive, virgin girls as a wife, even if you are married before. Polygamy is also on the rise, right? They also like when they want to have a second wife or third wife, they do not look for women in their 40s or in their 30s. They want someone younger. Someone younger. So, and many girls, because of this social pressure in Uzbekistan, because of the expectations, high expectations for brides, many girls are also making choice of marrying foreign nationals, such as Turkish men, right, who are also Muslim, who also follow Hanafi Mazhab, and who treat, reportedly, their wives kinder, let's say, right, with less domestic violence than men in Uzbekistan. So, so there is an imbalance of young men and young women. So the parents of young boys are in a little bit of panic to find a good match, to secure a good match earlier. For example, my grandparents still live in rural areas of Uzbekistan, in Surkhandarya, and from what I hear, my aunties, from my relatives, in those villages, there are not any single girl left in 11th class, where girls are 17, 18, who are not engaged already. Right? Because people are trying to find a bride for their sons sooner. So girls who are not finding their match sooner might also feel left out, seeing others are marrying immediately after school. Immediately they hit 18. The girl boss era that we talk about, right? Strong, independent, educated, with a good career. Those girl bossing seems cool in the movies, not in villages, and girls do understand it, right? In rural areas where there are very few job opportunities and few opportunities for higher education, a good match is a good prospect. I'm not saying it's ideal, but that's the reality. There is a role of social media as well, right? You constantly see this Islamic married couples life or secular weddings and post-wedding lives where influencers promote it, hype it so much. So it's also a means of a social pressure for young girls to find their matches early. So what I want to say is that not all girls are manipulated into marriage at such a young age.
Nigina, I want to wrap up our conversation by asking you the last question. Again, you briefly touch on this topic, but again, going back to what you shared before, in the article that you wrote clearly that the increasing popularity of social media platforms has heightened parents' urgency to marry off their daughters sooner. But meanwhile, there are some issues embedded within the social media platforms. Especially, you mentioned that information on social media and sexting and expose views as threatening to the family's honor. So help us with better understanding. By using social media, that could basically reduce the anxiety from the parents but also that increases the possibility of information being revealed or being taken advantage. So I want to hear your final thoughts on that one. What is the role of social media, and how do you think that we're able to use the social media appropriately in order to help the girls or even help the parents to find the right person or to find the right partner? Your final thoughts.
Thank you. That's an interesting question. I probably already mentioned the role of social media in hyping up the idea of marriage and exerting social pressure on girls themselves. But there is also a role of social media where, for example, social media removes a barrier between young men and women, right, in the society. If young boys and girls, for example, are not classmates or they do not usually talk to each other in the society because they are not in the similar circles. But social media removed this barrier. Around 10, 15 years ago, girls used it to hide the fact that they used social media, for example, because it was a bad reputation and finding a good match might be problematic. Those are changing, of course. But what has become a common, not common, but still happens a lot, is girls become victims of sexual extortion. Right, where young men talk to them for some time, they meet online, whether it's Instagram or Telegram or whatever the app is. So they form a certain bond with each other, and they start sending each other nudes and others, which is their business, of course. Right, but later on, those young boys might blackmail girls for money in exchange not to disseminate the content on the internet or send those photos or videos to the girl's family or to her future husband if she gets engaged in the future, etc. The pattern has become so common that Tashkent had to criminalize sexual extortion last year. I'm not saying all victims are young girls. Men become victims of sex extortion quite often too. But unlike others, young girls are ashamed to go to the police seeking protection. Right? From what I hear, police in Uzbekistan work well if girls go and say like, hey, I'm being blackmailed, this guy is asking from me money or gold, jewelry or whatsoever, right? The problem is, again, girls are ashamed in front of their family members because they cannot go alone to the police, right, in front of the police and the judges. And law enforcement representatives are quite judgmental towards girls, blaming them for sharing their intimate photos and videos. They help, of course, but there is still this judgmental looks and attitude from them. So, and again, when girls do not go to police, and if a guy, for example, disseminate her photos all over the internet, it becomes a little bit difficult for her to to find a good match in the future. And also, parents see the social media as a mean because of which children are growing up earlier than they use it to, right? Because young people are exposed to so many information from all over the world. It's not just national content, right? It's all this influence of Western lifestyle, what they call liberal values, and some might think those liberal values are not compatible with our cultural values, etc. So, because of the social media's influence, parents also think that girls are becoming or growing up rather too early, so it's safer to marry her off earlier. So those are basic reasons like why girls are getting married off earlier. But again, it's not always forced.
Right. Well, again, Nigina, by having the conversation with you, that help us understand so much regarding what's happening today to the younger generations in the nation of Uzbekistan. Again, ladies and gentlemen, it's such an honor to speak to Niginakhon Saida. Again, Saida is a scholar whose research interests focus on gender, Islam, and politics in Central Asia. I strongly encourage everyone go online to check out this amazing article, which is entitled Brides Too Soon, The Rising Trend of Early Marriages in Uzbekistan. Early marriages are on the rise, primarily driven by a growing scarcity of eligible brides. Well, Nigina, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure. We'd love to have you back on the show for our future episodes.